All right, God bless everybody. It is great to be with you. Today the topic is God view. Now, what do you think of when you think of God? Do you picture a person or an essence? Do you visualize a standalone being or something larger? Is it an active or passive presence? How big and how capable is your God? Where is that God right now? And what is your God view? Now, our God view determines our expectation. And our expectation determines what we allow ourselves to receive. Our God view is some pretty important stuff. It's so important because it sets your believing. Last week I had 3 curious conversations about God with some local entrepreneurs in the glassed atrium of my office lobby. And each one awarded me limited access into their private God view. And one spoke of her God as being a well-known, bearded, standalone, one place at one time being. A second was a very prosperous millionaire, a man with his superior atheist view, and he imaged God as no more than a static supply of something that's already been provided. And the third guy who was talking to me with this millionaire wanted to make sure that I knew that he knew more about God than that atheist guy we were talking to. I love humanity. And is God limited to a humanesque body type? Is God nothing more than the substance which has already been supplied? Is the knowledge of God only a tool that we use to bend someone to our way of thinking, like a hammer pounding a pulled nail straight? Oh, the humanity. The ancient Greek philosopher and poet Xenophonus somehow grabbed onto the idea that God had been lost for centuries. And Xenophonus, he lived around 500 BC. And he once sarcastically lambasted his fellow poets because they imagined and wrote about a God looking and thinking pretty much like they themselves look, think, and act. He cited that if they were black, then God must be black. If they have light hair and blue eyes, then so does their God. If they commit adultery or steal or cause division or get angry, so does their God or gods. He even said that, quote, if horses and oxen had hands and could draw pictures, that their gods would look remarkably like horses and oxen. And this is from the book Lives of the Philosophers. Old Zenny just about nailed it. I believe he was on to something. And around the time of Xenophonus, the world had been getting smaller and smaller because of cultures commingling and wars and trade. And the Jews had been conquered at that time and exiled to Babylon. And both Confucius and Buddha had just recently begun to teach in the East, while at the same time the Persians had conquered much of the Middle East, including India. During his life, the Persians defeated the Babylonians and freed the Jews. Esther became queen of the Persians and saved the Jews from genocide. The Republic of Rome was founded and born. The Greco-Persian War raged for almost 50 years, as did the movement of men, materials, information from one country to the other. The God view was expanded. Think of all the cultures that had intertwined and intermingled, and all the things that would have been learned from the Judeans and from others. I think Xenophonus was onto something. He was one of the first Westerners to be thought of as monotheistic, a believer in one supreme God. And he thought more of what he termed the, quote, one greatest God, end of quote, than he did the limitations that his friends put on their perfectly posed selfie deity. People spend more time taking and posing that perfect selfie on Facebook than they do finding a way to picture the one true perfect God. I think that our God view must be far greater than even our limited personal opinions if we're ever going to be able to believe, to prosper, and anticipate an eternity with that one God. You know, isn't there a scripture that says that we should expect to have exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think or dream about? Yeah, Ephesians 3:20, right? It should be, we should be able to have more than we can even imagine. Do we? And so I think, and I ask you, and I pose this question, if we don't have everything that's promised, then is the problem with that one true great God? Or is there something wrong in our thinking? And I think the first step, and this teaching is only step one, the first thing is we need to get our mind set on who this one great God is. What can he do? Where does he live? What does he do for us? Now, most religions limit God to the size of their founders or their teachers' mindset. But few people dare veer too far from that firm boundary for fear of expulsion. I mean, gosh, every church does it. Get excommunicated if you go too close to the edge, or you get banned or shunned. I mean, we've all been around long enough, you see. And it's got to be that founder's vision, whereas I think that's just a start. It may be a kickoff. That's why people sometimes change church after church. They're just learning more and more and more as they go different places, or they go to different teachers or different books. Who cares? Who's to say you're wrong? Most atheists limit God to the size of the lie they consistently perpetuate to make themselves feel better and more self-assured, and you feel smaller. Most religious people just can't keep their judgmental church lady mouths shut, causing fights, wars, and God forbid, the unforgivable unfriending someone on Facebook. Side note, I saw on Instagram recently a picture of a Holy Bible, and on the Bible was a white sticker with red letters that said, quote, "Religion has been the cause of more wars than any other factor throughout history," end of quote. I thought, why would somebody post that? Somebody got burned by religion. You're always going to get burned by religion. Duh! You're always going to. You'll never get burned by truth and love and light and power. See, that sounds pithy and intellectual, but it isn't really true. And I checked into it. It's difficult to believe, but the Encyclopedia of War, yes, there is an Encyclopedia of War, it states that only 7% of all wars ever fought were caused because of religion. 7%. And only 2% of the people who've died in all the wars through history have been because of religious reasons. Let that sink in for a minute. Most wars are a manipulation of people in order to gain control and increase wealth. The underlying cause may be spiritual, but historically it's not religious. Is our view of God a well-posed selfie God, or is he just simply a supply? It's like a bag of coins set there. Find them or not. Just left behind here on earth for us to use. Is he, as most religions think, a set of beliefs like an electric fence to keep humanity in line? Now, I'm not sure I'm not sure if I would be pleased with any of those God views. And I'm not. That's not how I think of God. God isn't some bearded being sitting at one place, whether on a cloud or a throne or, whatever, floating around looking for something to do. I don't believe he's just a supply that was left here. And nor do I believe it's just a moral code to control people with. The God I trust in is limitless, timeless, tireless. He owns and fills the universe. He's all-powerful and ever-loving. He is only light and never darkness, beneficent, magnificent. He calls himself our Father. Our Father, y'all. And promises to supply all our need and to heal our every wound. He can enlighten our eyes, can reveal to us the riches of the glory of the mystery. He can make a way where there is no way. And he said way back in the day that he exists for us. That's my God view. That's my God view. God exists for you, God view. The children of Israel, who are about to be led out of slavery and out of Egypt, had asked Moses to explain this God that he talked about to them. They wanted to know what this God was. These were the children of freaking Israel who had been in captivity in Egypt. They didn't even know. And they wanted him to share his God view. So Moses didn't just slop together an answer. He asked God what to tell him. Tip here, God can tell you what to say too. God can tell you what to say at times. God can explain himself to you. You ever ask your dad when you were a kid, what do you do, Daddy? Unless he worked for the mafia, he was going to tell you. Or the CIA, yet I digress. I'll bet God wants us to do the same thing to him. He wants us to ask him. Exodus 3:14. And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am has sent me unto you. Oh, the religious Christians just love that verse. But a third grade level word study of that verse can change your God view much like it did Moses. For Moses to have to ask, he needed a little schooling, didn't he? He had not only lived in Egypt, been raised there, at the hand of the Pharaoh, but then he had left and he was trained up by Jethro, who had a great handle on truth, but he didn't know it the same as God needed Moses to know it. He was a prophet. Excuse me. The words I am that I am are not the commingling of God with Jesus, as so many pious preachers of petrified parchments proclaim. You see, God blew Moses' mind when he said that I am that I am, which simply translated, third grade level, folks, I will be whatever you need me to be. Now put that in your pipe for a second. Stick that in your pocket. Pull that out of your wallet. How big is that? God will be whatever we need him to be, which means that he is able to do whatever we need him to do. God will be what we need him to be so he can do what we need him to do. What do you need, folks? Do you need healing? I'd say all of us do for something. Do you need prosperity? Whoever has enough. You know what I'm saying? What do you need? Now, while your head's spinning a little bit, let me throw in another twist here. That I am statement can also be translated, I exist for you. Did you get that? What? You know, if that doesn't make you feel all warm and fuzzy, I don't know what's going to. God exists for us. God exists for you. God exists for you, all of you. Now we're getting somewhere. God exists for you. That's a pretty good God view. God inhabits your eternity. This is the next God view. Now we know why God exists, that He exists for you and me, and that He will be whatever we need Him to be. Now, that's not a bad view of God, but wait, there's more. You know, how big is this God of ours? If our view of God is a corporal being, a physical entity with a beard or a flowing mane or blue skin, we're never going to be able to believe to receive more than the spiritual equivalent of a Quickie Mart snack. Quickie Mart snack. You know, do you want to eat those ancient silver-wrapped burritos that have been baking there day after day underneath of that, under that the warmth of the heat lamp? What about that white box of dry broken nachos with something that tries to pass as cheese dried all over it? Or do you want all that God, who owns the universe and who exists for you, can offer? What meal do you want, folks? The easy one? Isaiah 57:15. For thus saith the high and lofty one that inhabiteth eternity. Okay, my mind just blew just a little bit just then. How big is eternity? How big is it? Eternity is all the past, all the future, and all that's now. Now I'd say that's a big space to fill, right? That's a big set of shoes God has to put on. Now I just put him in a corporal environment. But you get the point. This God of ours is at this very instant already living with you in your future paradise. He's already lived out your life with you. I'm going to say it again. God has already lived every second of every day of your long life with you, now and in eternity. And He's also at this very moment way back at the creation. That's a lot to take in. That's some heady stuff. But even Isaiah knew this 150 years before Xanaphanes had his epiphany that there was this one great God, and that this one great God lived in the spectrum of all eternity. I mean, that's a lot to take in. It's hard for a human to comprehend that, because all we know is time. All we know is I'm a year older, and another year older, and another year older. You know, it's time for work. It's time to go home from work. It's time to turn on the TV. It's time to do my homework. You know, whatever it's time for. Time to have a baby, you know, or time to make one. Whoops. Can I say that? You know, so modern self-helpers are trying hard to reintroduce the knowledge of our abundant universe. Read the books. Listen to Audible. You'll know what I'm talking about. These modern writers know that we must first be able to believe in an abundant universe, and that there is a power, an energy source, a thinking substance, a God, if you want to call it that, which is able to direct us in our calling to our treasure. They all say this in some word or another. If we can see it, we can have it. If you can think it, you can have it. Now, if you think about believing, they tell us that if we can think it, it must be possible, or we would never have been inspired to think it in the first place. Where do those thoughts come from? Where do your inspirations come from? God has the time just for you. Remember, He exists for you. He exists for you. He is already in your future. It can feed you all the tidbits of information to direct you to your prize or your desire right now. If you lived in the future and you knew you could communicate with the people a few years back, would you? You'd probably give them stock tips or something, you know. You know, I mean, what would you do? Which horse is going to win? I mean, God knows all this stuff. It's crazy. But I mean, the point, that's not really the point here. But I mean, the job that you need, the new clients you need, the health that you need. I mean, look at health now compared to what it used to be. 500 years ago, they thought the earth was flat. 500 years ago, they thought urine was good for a lady's face. And they thought leeches were great, you know. And bleeding people was a great thing. Have we come a long way since then? When I was a kid, cancer was just said in a whisper. It was said in a whisper, "Oh, my aunt has cancer." It was pretty much a dead. Is it now? No. Some are harder than others, but look how far they've come. In 500 years, you're going to look back and think, well, you're going to look back. People are going to look back on on what we're worried about now and go, that's so crazy. Leeches? Flat earth? Oh, wait, that wasn't them. Let me see. They believed that, you know, you had to work from 9 to 5 and you had to work hard if you're ever going to accomplish anything. I mean, all these things that we've been taught our whole life. We're going to find that some of those aren't really true. The truth is your God view. Have you ever thought a song and then all of a sudden heard it played on the radio? It's like, what? You know, you ever thought of a person and just that very moment they called you or shot you a text or an email or posted something on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever you're into, you know? You know, of course, in 500 years, they're going to be laughing at this like they're going to be listening to this in 500 years. You ever get the thought to change lanes and then you barely miss an accident because of that? You ever decide to drive a different route and you realize because you did, you missed a terrible accident? This has happened to everyone, folks. Even self-proclaimed atheists say this stuff. Where do you think this information comes from? Is God just the helper of Christians, or is he a helper of all humanity? God knows exactly how to communicate if people just want to listen. But we get so mistrained or so stubborn or so scared that we don't want to step out on it. Where do these thoughts come from? They come from your future. They come from the future. All faith is based in future, not in the past. It always is. If you're looking forward to having something, do you have it? No. You don't already have it. That's called faith or believing. You put in whatever word you want to. You see, God is alive in your future, trying to help direct you today through your thoughts or by inspiration. Are you listening? Are we listening? If we don't have it all, we're either not listening or we're not trying. I'm going to say that again. If we don't have everything we need, we're either not listening or we're not trying. Now, concerning not trying, I recently saw a part of a show where a family helped raise a group of abandoned baby fox kits. And the playful kits were kept in a large pen and they were hand-fed. But now they were of the age where they needed to be released back into the wild. But they had to first learn how to hunt for their own food if they had any hope of survival outside that pen. Well, the humans know that these furry critters won't be hand-fed in the woods, so they had to do something. So I watched the handlers take a big bucket and they poured a whole bucket of small fish into this small pond that was in their pen. And they thought that it would instinctively trigger them to go after it and to hunt them. But sadly, the little fox, they just sat there with their head on their paws watching the show. You know why? It's a lot easier to be hand-fed in a pen. And that's what the world's done to us. And we're happy to live in that little pen as long as somebody will keep feeding us. You know, I'd rather run barefoot with a stick, you know, and be out there doing something. You know, so, you know, they didn't try. They waited for that handout. See, we know that God exists for you and me, and that He will be whatever we need Him to be. We also know that He lives in eternity and can help us comprehend and cash in on what should be impossible for us to comprehend. Eternity is another view of God. God inhabits eternity to help you. Now, all the time in the world, God view. 2 Peter 3:8 from the Voice. Don't imagine, dear friends, that God's timetable is the same as ours. As the Psalm says, for with the Lord, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like one day. God has 1,000 years to work on your today. God has 1,000 years to work on your today. Imagine if you had the knowledge of 1,000 years to help you get out of debt. You do. You do. Imagine if you had the knowledge of 1,000 years to find a cure for your sickness. Think in 1,000 years, whatever sicknesses you have will be able to be cured? I would almost guarantee it in 1,000 years. God says 1,000 years is as a day, and a day is as 1,000 years. You know, I'll bet you could figure it out if you had 1,000 years to figure it out. Well, you don't really have to. All we have to do is be able to trust, believe, have faith in the one who's already there. And He knows when we're going to believe. You ever seen somebody get a windfall of money and you think, gosh, how come they got that and I didn't? Well, they believed. Well, it was an inheritance. They still believed. God worked it out 50 years ago with their grandpa so they could have what they need now. I'm just saying it's so dang easy, but we've made it so hard and we talk ourselves out of it. Oh, well, I don't ever get stuff coming easy to me. Yeah, you do sometimes. Every one of you could say you've had stuff come easy sometimes. You see? Sometimes it's a little harder. If you can do it one time, you can do it another. And I think those of you people who speak in tongues, if you can speak in tongues, which is bringing something supernatural into the physical world, you can believe to do anything. You can believe to do anything. Now, Peter quoted this 1,000 years is like a day, but it's from Psalm 90, which was originally penned by Moses some 1,500 years before Peter. For Moses to have done what he did to save the children of Israel from sure death, to protect them from the might of the Pharaoh and the greatest army on earth, from the plagues, from splitting the water, to being able to talk to God like a friend, he had to be tapped into something that was tapped into the future. How could he have even imagined the Red Sea splitting? And you think, well, if you can't imagine, you can't do it. Well, I think you can have more than you can believe for. That's what Ephesians 3:20 says. You can have more than you can believe for. Well, there should be no lack in our life. But if we have lack in our voice, if we have lack in our actions, if we have lack in what we read and write and the music we listen to, we will find lack. Stop hanging out with people who are worse than you. If you're hanging out with deadbeats and losers, even if they're your friends or family, they will bring you down. It's just a law. But I want to help them. Okay, well, get in there and help them. But if they start pulling on you, it's time to let go. There's a difference. Or they're like those fox in the pen, just watching the little fishies go swimming by. You see, I once heard a serious poem And it was about the lonely Father God waiting through all the ages, all the dinosaurs, all those eons of time, after the creation, waiting for the arrival of his children, waiting for the arrival of his Christ. And it was moving. It might even cause a little tear to well up in the corner of your eye, you see. But that poem is just as limiting as Xenophanes' friends' dissertations on their selfie gods. A God who looks like them, acts like them. I want to walk like you, want to talk like you. I love how he said even if horses and oxen could draw, they'd draw pictures of gods to look just like them, horses and oxen. And that's how people think of it. If you feel limited, then your God's going to be limited. We got to just jump past that little hurdle, that thing. God is totally unlimited. He inhabits eternity. He exists throughout all time to help us. God has never been lonely. Why? Because he completely fills all time, which means he is so big that he's both in your past and in your future at the same time. God has never been without you. Did you know that? Way back during the creation, he was already with you at the gathering together and beyond. I see some of you shaking your heads on that one. But he's always been with you. He's even been with you when you did that thing that one time. He completely fills up all time. You see, time, if there is such a thing, allows God to enjoy us both now and in eternity. There is no time to God. And in reality, there's probably no time for us. Just the limits we put on ourselves with our wristwatch or smartphone, of which they won't have in 500 years. Think about this. We've always been with God. You have always been with God. Always been with God. Say what? You have always been with God. You've always been in his heart and mind. We got to think of life at a different level, different dimension than we're thinking of it, or should I say God. See, this view allows our God to pepper our path with unbelievable gifts and goodies and riches and directions. We just need to learn how to see and believe. How do you get yourself to believe? Jesus said, hey, if you believe that this mountain can be cast into the sea, it's going to be cast into the sea. If you don't doubt in your heart, but you believe it's going to come to pass, it's going to happen, folks. You think, well, it's a metaphor, it's an analogy, it can never happen. Well, why would he say something like that? How could somebody be raised from the dead and still be alive? See, God inhabits eternity. He's already spent an eternity with you. He exists for you. He has all the time in the world to help you handle your situation. Did you know that God even has time to help you handle that one situation? That one that you're thinking about right now? God has all the time of the creation to do that. You remember that one study I talked about a few years ago? And it's scientifically proven. They've checked the molecular structure of waters and moisture, and they realize that almost half the water that's on the earth today predates the sun and our solar system. Where did it come from? Where did it come from? Why is it here? I bet we needed it. I bet we needed that water here, or it wouldn't be here. Think about it. That's a pretty good God view, folks. He has all the time in the world to help you handle your situation. All the time. And he exists for you. That's a great God view. Now, nothing's too hard. God view. And I'm going to hit a bunch of verses this time because I don't even need to explain them. Jeremiah 32:17 says, nothing's too difficult for God. Nothing's too difficult for God. So is anything too difficult for God? No. What about that one thing that you're working on? Is that too difficult for God? No. Psalm 62:11 states that power belongs to God. It belongs to Him. Power belongs to God. Jesus said in Matthew 19:26 that with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. With God all things are possible. Those who think it impossible will find that it is. Those who think something's going to be impossible, it is. Those who think it's all possible will quite possibly get all that they think. It all starts with a thought, folks. It all starts with a thought. Believing starts with a thought. Faith starts with a thought. I'm just trying to expand your thought just a little bit today. Like someone once said, even the word impossible tells us that I am possible. It's always possible for you to have all your need met. And that's the design of the universe. The design of the universe is prosperity and abundance and health and growth and life and love and enjoyment. It's active God. It's an active God. It's not a static God. That's the desire of God for you and I. All things are possible. What all thing do you need? Always remember that you can never figure it all out either. If you could figure it out, you would already have it. Hence the term faith or believing. It's always for something in the future. Take some action. Take any action. Don't try to plan your whole life out. You can't. Make a rough draft and start moving as hard and as fast as you can. Don't wait to be hand-fed. Grow your crop. Does that take time sometimes? Go hunting. Put in the work. See, faith is always a belief of future good. Paul said in Hebrews 11:3 that what we see was not made out of things which are visible. The things you see now was made out of things that weren't one time visible. Isn't that what believing is? Sure. He knew that it was possible to manifest abundance out of what seems to be absence. And those of you who have a lack, there's something absent from your life. Well, we have to get your mind to the point where we believe that God is big enough to handle that situation. And you never let go of that. You, with great gratitude, you go to bed thinking that. You wake up with great gratitude that you're going to have everything you need. Every time a problem happens, think about the silver lining of that problem. You get into traffic. All right, this is great. I can listen to more music. Or I can finish listening to this Audible book. Or I can actually talk to my wife. Or instead of hitting the windshield, and pulling out your S&W 40, so, it doesn't, I'm just saying that you can turn it good. If something bad happens, your car breaks, okay. Well, now I get to see God work in this situation. I can't wait to see how God's going to get me the money to get this one fixed. Just always turn your conversation to the silver lining. You see, God makes us see of things that were not before visible. Here's one of my wife's favorite verses, but I'm going to read it from the Message. Proverbs 3:5-8 from the Message. Trust God from the bottom of your heart. Don't try to figure out everything on your own. Listen for God's voice in everything you do, everywhere you go. He's the one who will keep you on track. Don't assume that you know it all. Run to God. Run from evil. Your body will glow with health, and your very bones will vibrate with life. I like that. Vibrate with life. Romans 4:21 says that God is able to do what He promised. Philippians 4:13 from the AMP proclaims, I am ready for anything and equal to anything through Him who infuses me with inner strength and confident peace. Confident peace, inner strength, infused. Who gives it to you? It's that God that inhabits eternity that exists for you. Genesis 18:14 says, Is anything too hard for the Lord? Is anything too hard for the Lord? The short answer is no. Nothing is too hard for God, and nothing should be too hard for us to receive from God. So in closing, he set up this entire universe to bless little old you and little old me. He exists for you. He promised to heal and prosper you. So I ask you, what do you think of God? Do you picture a person or an essence? Do you visualize a standalone being or something larger? Is it an active presence or a passive presence? And how big and how capable is your God? Where is that God right now? What is your God view? Our God view determines our expectation, and our expectation determines what we allow ourselves to receive. That God view is pretty important stuff, folks. All great men and women you read about in the Bible saw God as the loving supplier of all their need. All the people today who have obtained success through generosity and not deceit have caught a glimpse of this unlimited supply and headed in that direction, Christian or not. The Greek philosopher and poet Xenophanes somehow grabbed onto an idea about God's greatness that had been lost for centuries. The God I trust in is limitless, timeless, tireless. He owns and fills the universe. He is all-powerful and ever-loving. He is only light, never darkness, beneficent and magnificent. He calls himself our Father and promises to supply all our need and to heal our every wound. He can enlighten our eyes, can reveal to us the riches of the glory of the mystery. He can make a way for us when there is no way. God exists for us. The amazing, colossal, and abundant loving greatness of God should be our God view. God bless you.